Hello, my name is Aaron and welcome to another video. Today we're talking about my lens collection for Sony Alpha cameras. Currently, I use two E-mount lens system cameras, the Sony a5100 and the Sony a6000. What's great about this is that they both use the same type of lenses, meaning that whatever new lens I buy is interchangeable between both the cameras that I have. All the lenses that I have and all the lenses that we're talking about today are E-mount lens system lenses and for APS-C size sensors. Before we get started, if you're enjoying the video, please consider subscribing to the channel and dropping a like on the video. So there's lots of good reasons to buy additional lenses for your cameras. If you're just using these cameras casually, I'll generally find that the kit lens is pretty powerful. It doesn't do everything, but it's a good all-rounder. But if you're looking to move into more video focused, more portrait focused, more landscape focused, any specialized area of photography, you're probably going to need to upgrade your lens. The beauty of Sony E-mount lens system cameras is that there is a wide variety of lenses available, and this selection is growing all the time. There are plenty of first-party lenses made by Sony, and lots of great third-party lenses being made by companies such as Sigma, Rokinon, and loads of other manufacturers, meaning that you've got a large range of options at a variety of price points. The first lens that I'm going to talk about is a 12mm f2.0 prime lens from Samyang. This is a wide-angle lens with a wide f2.0 aperture. This means that it's a fast lens and lets in tons of light. This makes it great for nighttime photography and also astrophotography. The 12mm focal length means that this lens is perfect for landscape photography or other wide-angle photography that you might need, such as real estate, estate agent photography for interiors and things like that. As this is a prime lens, this basically means that you can't zoom in or out. The 12mm focal length is a fixed focal length, meaning that all your shots are going to be wide all the time. Of course, you can zoom in using software, but it is worth bearing in mind that that wide-angle shot is the only type of shot that you will get, meaning that this lens isn't the type of lens that you would buy for portrait photography and things like that. It does have a lot of uses, and that wide aperture means that you get excellent depth of field, which is basically blurry backgrounds in your shots, if that's what you are going for. The Samyang 12mm is a relatively small lens, especially if you compare it to the kit lens. You can see it's only slightly longer, and it's the lens hood really that makes it look that much bigger. It's got a fisheye style lens, as you can see there. That doesn't really add a fisheye style effect to your final images. Well, not so much in my opinion anyway. There is no electronic connections on this lens, of course, which means that there is no autofocus. So this is an extremely sharp and fast lens, and its price point is about £285, about $330 new. Of course, you can pick up these type of lenses much cheaper second-hand. Other things worth bearing in mind with this lens is that it has no autofocus, which means you have to do all your focusing manually, and there is also no stabilization built in, meaning that I don't find that it's that great a lens for video. However, if you're going to be taking video on a tripod, of course that will be stable enough. Generally, I find this a really excellent lens for nighttime, astrophotography, as I mentioned, and landscape photography. Because the focal length is so wide, it means that you can fit in a wide landscape into your shot. The next lens I'm going to talk about is from the opposite end of the spectrum, and that's the 55 to 210mm Sony telephoto zoom lens. For me, I use this lens for opposite reasons to the Samyang. It is for telephoto zoom photography. So by that, I mean stuff like wildlife photography, perhaps sports photography. Basically, when you're in a situation where you need to be a little bit further away from your subject matter, but you still want a zoomed in shot. At 55 to 210mm, it means that the zoom range is pretty long, as you can see from these examples, but it does mean that even at the most zoomed out 55mm, you couldn't use it, say, for a shot like this. You'd be far too zoomed in on my face. You wouldn't be able to fit it in unless you had a very long room, so you wouldn't use this lens for things like vlogging. Now, some of the limitations of this lens is that it has a very narrow aperture at f4.5 to 6.3 at 210mm, means that it's not going to have great performance in low light and you're not going to get excellent depth of field from your shots. If that's not the main use of what this lens is for, it does have a lot of plus points. It has autofocus built in, as well as optical stabilization, OSS, meaning that video will be pretty well stabilized even at those long focal lengths. So with the Sony 55 to 210, you can see that it is considerably longer than the kit lens, and it is quite heavy. I think it's a similar finish and texture to the kit lens. The lens element itself is quite small and flat, which probably explains why the aperture isn't so wide. And you can see here the electronic connections for autofocus and optical stabilization. When you fully extend the barrel, which you have to do manually, you can see the lens does get considerably longer, but to be honest, for a telephoto lens up to 210mm, it's still pretty compact. The price point of this lens is about £230 to $300 new, but again is available much cheaper second-hand. It's also worth noting that this lens doesn't have a power zoom, meaning that you have to manually turn the lens barrel to zoom in, but this is only a small downside. The long focal length, the optical stabilization, and the autofocus built in means that this is about the cheapest telephoto lens that you will get with those features. So even though I've had this lens a long time and is relatively cheap, I still use it a lot of the time. So if you're after a cheapish telephoto lens, it's worth considering. The next lens I'm going to talk about, I can't show you right now because I'm using it to record, and this is my newest lens, which is the Sony 18 to 105mm constant f4 lens. Ultimately, I bought this lens as a replacement for the Kit Lens, but still wanted the zoom range that the Kit Lens offers. Personally, I get a lot more use out of zoom lenses compared to prime lenses. This made this a top choice for me when shopping for a new lens. The 18 to 105mm zoom range means that it's wide enough still for videos like this, but zooms in enough for plenty of things like wildlife photography. I found this lens very impressive so far. It's ultra sharp for photography and I find it an excellent video lens. As it's a more expensive first-party Sony lens, it has very fast autofocus and optical stabilization (OSS) built in. Of course, that OSS makes it a great performer for video, and this suits my type of usage perfectly, and I've been very impressed with it so far. Keep an eye on this channel for a full review of this lens coming soon. You can see that it's a large lens and not very compact, and that constant f4 aperture means that it isn't the best performer in low light, but it's constant all the way, so you get the same widest aperture from 18mm all the way up to 105, which was a big selling point for me. Here is the Sony 18 to 105. As you can see straight away, it's considerably larger than the other lenses we've looked at today. Just in comparison, there is the Kit Lens, so what, 3, 4, 5 times longer and considerably heavier. If you look at the lens element there, it is massive, especially compared to the Kit Lens, but that allows for that constant f4 aperture all the way up to 105 zoom range. Again, the electronic connections for autofocus and stabilization. As it's a power zoom lens, it has a wide and telephoto rocker on the side here, and the nice little G logo for G Master Lens. The lens body itself is pretty heavy. I've got the petal style lens hood on at the moment, which you can take off if you like. The price point of this lens is the highest out of all the lenses we'll talk about today, and new goes for about £420 or up to $600 new, but of course you can pick it up cheaper second hand. The next lens I'm going to talk about, I wasn't 100% sure if I was going to include, but I still have it and I still use it quite a lot, and that is the good old Kit Lens. It has a focal length of 16 to 50mm, so fairly versatile, and as you can see and probably already know if you already have a Sony Alpha camera, is that it is very compact. I would say, and you probably already know, that the Kit Lens is a decent performer. It has a decent zoom range, it has decent image quality, it's decent for video, it's just a good all-rounder, and if your camera already comes with it, then it's a perfect start for getting into photography, and I do truly believe this. This lens gets bashed a lot on the internet. I was surprised how long I've used this lens for without feeling like I've needed to upgrade. It's wide enough for YouTube videos, and up until very recently I was using it for all my videos. It has an okay zoom range going up to 50mm, so you can zoom in fairly close to your subject, and it has optical stabilization built in and autofocus. So generally pretty good. So here is the trusty old Kit Lens. As you all know, it's pretty compact, pancake style. The lens extends out of itself when activated, but you can't extend it whilst it is powered off. It has the power zoom controls here on the side, and those electronic connections again for autofocus and stabilization. The lens element itself is pretty small, so I still think it's fairly impressive the performance that you get out of this lens. To pick up one of these lenses new, I think it's about £170 or $135, don't know why it's cheaper in dollars, it just happens to be at the moment, but I wouldn't recommend buying this lens, but it's worth bundling in when you're buying your camera if you can, because it's generally much cheaper this way. So last but not least is the cheapest lens I'm going to talk about today, which is the Photasy 35mm f1.7 lens. This is an entirely manual focus lens with no stabilization. The picture you'll get from it isn't particularly sharp, in fact it's only sharp in the middle, and all around the edges it has quite a weird blurring feature, which is basically what the lens is supposed to do. Apparently it's an adapted CCTV lens. I don't know if that's just a gimmick and a selling point, but basically it's more of an artistic, experimental lens. You wouldn't use this for anything professional, but it's a lot of fun for messing around with, and it was in fact the very first lens that I bought after the Kit Lens. It has no optical stabilization and autofocus, which is understandable, seeing as its price point is £25 or $35, which is dirt cheap for a lens. It's a fixed 35mm focal length, which is quite a desirable focal length and does look pretty good for stuff like street photography. I would recommend this lens just when you're starting out for something a bit different and a bit fun, so you can experiment with stuff like manual focus. Here we've got the Photo-C 35mm f1.7, as basic as a lens can be really. No electronic connections on the back, fairly small lens element, but not that small. And what's quite fun, as this is a manual lens, is that you can open and close the aperture, and you can see there the aperture blades opening and closing. So as I said, it's really compact. It's actually made out of solid metal, so it's got quite a decent amount of heft for it. So that is all the lenses I've got at the moment. A bit of a mix of primes and zooms, so you can see what type of stuff is available at kind of lower level to intermediary price points. Now you might be wondering why I've missed out the Sigma Trio, which is Sigma's 16, 30 and 56mm prime lenses. These are great wide aperture lenses which are highly regarded, and we'll be looking at picking up at least one of these soon, but for now I've focused more on zoom lenses because they suit me, but I know for a lot of users out there they much prefer prime lenses. So what E-mount lenses do you use? Do you still just use the kit lens, or have you upgraded? Let me know in the comments below, especially if you have any recommendations that I haven't mentioned. So my personal favourite at the moment is the Sony 18-105, but I do use all these lenses still for different purposes. If you've enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to the channel and dropping a like on the video, and also check out my photography on Instagram at aaron.prescott. But that's it from me for now. Until next time, see ya.